And good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I am Kim Davis. Oh, I almost lost you. It's kind of like live TV and a whole bunch of stuff happening at one time. At any rate, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm super excited that you guys are joining me today. Can you believe today is December the 14th? Like 2021 is almost over. That's crazy just for a number of reasons. But you know what? If you're listening or you're watching, that's great because that means that you've made it this far. So, a lot to get to on today's show. Some good news when you talk about what's happening with those young Houston Rockets. Kind of more of the same with the Houston Texans, and not a lot going on with the Astros because they're in a lockout. And here's what I'm excited about. My colleague and friend is joining me today. He's making his first, I say first because he'll be back, appearance on Chalk Talk. And he's going to help me kind of navigate some of these conversations. So you're in for a treat. Brandon Scott, who is, you may hear him sometimes on Sports Radio 610. He also has his own podcast. He does some writing. He does a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm glad that he has agreed to join me on Chalk Talk this morning. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Kim, I appreciate you for having me. How you doing?
I'm good. Listening to him with the great fancy microphone and all that kind of stuff. So listen, how are you today? And I know that you are, when you leave the show, you're going to cover something this morning.
Well, I was going to say, first of all, with the fancy microphone, I got to come correct if I'm going to be on Chalk Talk.
Well, I appreciate that.
I wasn't gonna half step that, but yeah, no. After this, I'm going over to the Four Seasons actually for the Bear Bryant Award announcements. They're having a luncheon to announce the Bear Bryant Award coaching finalists. And the Bear Bryant Awards is a partnership with the American Cancer Society and something that the station is heavily involved in. And so I'm gonna go over and do a little bit with that too a little bit later.
Do you have any thoughts about who, if you had a vote, who would you put? Who do you think should be on that list, and who's your coach of the year? I guess is what I'm getting to.
Oh, you know what? That is a fascinating question because I had not thought about it since all of the most recent news of the coaching carousel and seeing how coaches have moved around, all of the movement amongst coaches.
Right.
So I really had not given it a lot of thought of who my coach of the year would be. And I don't personally have a vote. But certainly more than anything, I think it's fascinating to see just the fact that when you talk about head coaches in college football right now, that you would have so many marquee jobs and coaches leaving marquee jobs. You normally don't have. Normally, the coach gets fired from that job. They don't leave it for another one. And so, in the case of Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma, kind of seeing the writing on the wall of what's going on, moving to the SEC. And going and moving over to USC for his own self, and then of course the thing with Brian Kelly, which I swear I seen that exact movie before, Kim. Whatever it was when he left Cincinnati and did the same thing for Notre Dame, so it was not surprising to see that. Just a lot of the movement, and then the fact that Florida was one of the earlier openings and didn't really get a lot of play because you had so much going on. That's been the thing I've been actually more fascinated with, more so than even it's been such a weird season in college football that it's funny that you would ask me that, and I had not given it any thought at all.
I think you make a good point. Who would have thought that the Florida job would not be highly coveted and one of the ones that you're just saying, people are lining up trying to get to? That's how much this thing has changed. And you talk about jobs that come open that normally don't. Notre Dame was one of the, if not the most coveted job in college football for decades. And Brian Kelly is like, deuces, I'm going to the SEC because really, and I guess for him, ultimately, it's about having a chance to get some players he couldn't get at Notre Dame to win the championship because he didn't even give Notre Dame a chance to match the money. The money's crazy stupid, but who knows if Notre Dame would have matched it. He didn't give him a chance to do that. So this college coaching situation is changed, and it's why I always say college football is not an amateur sport.
Not at all. No, yeah. Tell that to Brian Kelly. Go tell Brian Kelly that he's an amateur all of a sudden, and he doesn't get all of that money, or Nick Saban or any of them. But yeah, no, I think though the point about Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame for LSU that I found. I thought it was interesting that people did not really understand that and thought it was so shocking that you would leave a brand like Notre Dame to go to LSU. But it is a different situation. Like, you have to make it specific to Brian Kelly, who'd been there already for 13 years, had kind of seen, sort of maximized already what they were going to be, had kind of seen their best already. And
Right.
so it's not like he was leaving Cincinnati and then chose LSU over Notre Dame. He went to Notre Dame. They went, they made a couple of runs in the college football playoffs. Usually got stomped when they get there. And he's seen that movie already, seen that movie before, ready to move on to a different opportunity. It makes total sense to me.
I'm talking to Brandon Scott. Super excited that he's joining us on Chalk Talk today. We actually started kind of jumping into college football, and we'll stay with football before we get to one of the highlights that's happening in our city. And we both, of course, were covering the Houston Texans game on Sunday. Another decent first half of football for the Houston Texans, and then the second half, the wheels come off. Now, I mean, it's not great football, but if they could do some of what they managed to do in the first half, if they could do some of that in the second half, they may have some better results. Although we do understand they were playing Seattle, which obviously is a better team all the way around. But week in, week out, we have the same conversations, Brandon, about this Houston Texans team. And let me first get your thoughts on what you saw from Davis Mills and how you feel about that decision to make him the starter for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. So I was one of the people who I was a staunch defender of Tyrod Taylor earlier in the season. I thought that he should be playing once he became healthy. Obviously he wasn't available to play for a certain amount of weeks, but this conversation started several weeks ago when it was time for Tyrod Taylor to come off the injured list, and Davis Mills had played some, but hadn't necessarily played well or hadn't impressed outside of the New England game, which was a loss. And so all of the games that he started have been a loss. Not that should be the sole dictator of everything, but at that time, I thought that Tyrod Taylor had not played himself out of a job. I thought that if the competition is about a meritocracy, that Tyrod Taylor had at that point proven himself to be worthy of the starting job. Since he's been back, in the several weeks since he's been back, it has not been good. He has not validated or given you a reason to say that this is a guy who cannot be benched or we can't bring in another guy to start. So I'm actually fine with Davis Mills starting. He looked pretty good. I thought he made good decisions, was for the most part, and was accurate for the most part. I don't think that he was the sole issue or the main issue that the Texans have. They have a combination of issues that includes Davis Mills, being a rookie and not being necessarily an elite talent. But I thought he was fine. Started the game, completed his first 14 passes. Not that they were super difficult throws, but they played to his strengths. That first drive, for the life of me, Kim, I cannot understand why they can't replicate some of the things that they were able to do in that first drive.
I don't know why they go away from it, Brandon. I mean, first of all, we're all sitting in the press box. I'm like, wow, he's completed 14 of 14 passes, right? And so they don't have to be earth shattering. The fact that he was able to do that, I think, is okay. Then if that's what he can do, then that's what you call for him, right? Let him do what is working for him. And even though the other team will make some adjustments, I don't know why they can't replicate it either. I don't know why the play calling changes. And we hear David Culley talk about the lack of a running game. We see that they haven't had a running game really all season. I don't expect them to have one before this season is over. So I don't know why they can't do more of what they had in the first half later in the game.
Well,
none of the explanations make any sense to me.
No, I mean, I think we heard a little bit as close as we're going to get to it with Chris Conley on Monday, when he said that, I think that we've been out adjusted at this point, which is as nice as you can put it.
We've been out coached.
Credit to Chris Conley for eloquently and delicately saying a truthful thing, which is we have been out adjusted, and he didn't put it squarely on the coaches because, like I was saying earlier, it is a combination of issues of coaching and a lack of talent, and they just have not been able to overcome it. Like it took an anomaly of a type of game against the Titans for them to get their second win of the season, and obviously their first win of the season was the first game against Jacksonville, who's the only team that's probably as bad as they are, So and obviously that's their upcoming opponent, so they have another opportunity to do that again. But again, that is the problem, that a combination of being out adjusted and then not being whatever the adjustments are, they're not even able to go out there and able to execute it in in a way that's effective. So I mean, this is, but the thing about it is, this is the team that we've come to know. Like this is pretty consistent. They get 3 straight home games and they get shut out in the second half in all 3 of them. And one of the games they don't score at all. So I mean, this is who they are.
This is who they are, and what I find interesting, and so I think you're right when he said I was watching yesterday, on Zoom, and so I thought, wow, he did, that is about as eloquent, as you could say it, respectful. He didn't just say, man, these guys can coach. But the other teams do make adjustments, and the Texans are not able to do that, which takes you back to the Bill O'Brien era, which of course Tim Kelly was a part of. So we're getting some of that. I know there's been a lot of conversation about coaching and where there's some shortfalls there, especially as it relates to David Culley. And, you're not going to hear me with any pom-pom saying, no, David Culley is doing an amazing job. I just also wonder, a part of me wonders how much autonomy he has, and how many of the decisions that he makes are really his. I know he's on the sideline, and I hear people. I hear one of the guys on your station always talking about how horrible he is with clock management, and managing the game. And I'm like, really? Because we saw that the entire time Bill O'Brien was here. But anyway, I digress. I just am not really convinced, Brandon, that he gets to make all the final calls, and that all the things that we see happening are him. I think Nick is a lot more involved than people want to realize. And why do I think that? Because he's in the coaching booth in the headsets with a little coaching outfit on. That's unusual. I'm not going to say unprecedented. Unusual for a general manager to be that hands-on. And if your boss is in your ear, I'm just wondering, are these all your decisions?
I think that's a fair question, but I think there are also fair follow-ups with that. Is like, if he is not, if these decisions are not fully his, then why is that? Did they hire a coach on purpose who they felt like they could sort of have that authority over, and it not be an issue? And also who they maybe needed to have that authority over, and it not be an issue? Like, did they purposefully go out and get a guy who either wasn't, I don't want to say not qualified, because Culley's coached enough football to be qualified. I don't think the fact that he's never been a coordinator makes him unqualified. So I want to be careful there. That's not right. What I'm saying. But maybe someone who just didn't give you the impression that they were the guy, that they were the coach. Because I do think there are fair questions about that. So like, why that is. And then also with that is, if the criticisms, like if you were going to levy these criticisms on Culley that I think are mostly fair, like the tactical criticisms that exist, then it has to extend beyond, like if you acknowledge that, and I thought, because this is going back to your point, Kim, about him, are these decisions his? I think we all kind of are looking at each other and saying, like, if we're honest with ourselves, are saying, hey, he's only but so much, like he's not out of the loop or like not involved, but he's only but so much in charge,
exactly,
of anything, right?
Exactly.
I think we all would agree with that. So if we all agree with that, or if you take that premise, then you have to extend your criticism beyond just David Culley, and then whatever these issues about clock management and coaching, and all of that, going for it on fourth down or using a timeout to decide that you're not going to go for it and that you're going to kick the field goal anyway. All of that has to go beyond just David Culley if you acknowledge that he's only but so much in charge. So I think if we talk about it honestly, then we can say, hey, he's not that in charge. We don't know if he should be anyway.
Right.
But then at the same time, since he ain't, if he's not, then the criticism cannot just lie with him alone.
Talking with Brandon Scott, you make great points, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I do think I want to go back to one of the things you said. I think that's why they hired. Those are all plays into why they hired him. I'm like you. The fact that he wasn't a coordinator, I don't harp on that. I mean, he's got plenty of coaching experience, so I'm not going to say he wasn't qualified. It doesn't mean that you can have a lot of experience and not be suited for the head job. So I'm not saying that either. But I do think you have to be careful when people want to criticize the fact that he wasn't a coordinator. He wasn't, he was an associate head coach somewhere, but that he wasn't a coordinator. The road and the path is different for African American coaches. Even though in his press conference he was hired, he didn't think there was any problem with what was happening with African American coaches. I do think that Nick and Jack, because they clearly work as a tandem, hired Culley because he's the kind of coach they needed for now. And whatever that ends up being, it's the kind of coach that, we can hire, we get to hire the staff for him. We get to determine who his staff is. I don't know a lot of people that you would have said, hey, we want this guy to come in and be a head coach, who would have said, okay, I'm good with that, right? I don't know that would have been the case with most people, especially anyone with any prior experience, but even people who had not been a head coach before would have said, yeah, I got to bring my team with me, or at least most of my staff, right? So I think that was an indication from the beginning about control. And I'm sure, you don't work in this league as long as David Culley has and not know people to hire. So it cannot be that he didn't know who to hire. No, I'm not buying that. These guys have lots of relationships. He's been on a lot of staffs. He talks about some of the places he's worked in different relationships when we chat with him. So that's not an issue. But I do think it was on purpose for a number of reasons. I think it was on purpose because it was somebody that they could have a certain amount of control and dictate and create the environment that they wanted. And I'm going to say this, and this is me saying this. This is not Brandon. I think when they hired him, in the wake of all that was happening, post 2020, George Floyd, and criticisms about the organization and Deshaun not wanting to be here. Okay, so we're going to hire a black coach, but we're going to hire one that we're going to control, and he's not going to be here. I just think all of those things went into David Culley being the decision, being the choice. And I thought that from the beginning. And that's not a knock on him. We have to, I've heard people say, well, he shouldn't have taken the job. I'm not willing to say that, right? Why shouldn't he? Because he could, he might not have known it would ultimately be this. I don't know him on that level, but I'm not going to say he shouldn't have taken the job. What I'm saying is whoever they would have put in this seat, I think we would have had a similar kind of existence because they weren't going to hire anybody who had a different kind of constitution, if you will. So
yeah, I agree with you, Kim. And who on earth in his position would not have taken this job?
Right.
I cannot imagine. Like maybe from where I stand, I can judge and say, oh, maybe you shouldn't take that job. Easy for me to say as somebody who would never be considered for said job, right?
Right.
But like I'm not even in the field, nowhere near it. But for David Culley, somebody who, like, on the other side of it, you made the point of, who else were going to hire to be able to somewhat either manipulate or control or whatever kind of verbiage you want to use to describe it. On the other side for David Culley, where else was he going to get this job? Who else was going to hire David Culley? We know on Intel for a fact that this was never a thing before. Like Like
Right.
it is exactly as random as it seems. It's not one of those things. Oh, you guys just didn't know that David Culley was a secret head coaching candidate. It wasn't that. And then look at all of the other candidates that were out there, the others that they interviewed who did have head coaching experience, who also fit the same profile that you described. Black, coming off of 2020 and the year that was, and they interviewed Jim Caldwell and Leslie Frazier. Like they made that effort, and Leslie Frazier got there toward the end. So they were leaning a certain way. And what also in your right mind makes you think that somehow David Culley was the more impressive coaching candidate, either from resume or presentation, than Jim Caldwell or Leslie Frazier or anybody else that they interviewed, for that matter, just to be quite honest about it. So you got to think about that. And then another thing that I think about with hiring Culley, and you mentioned trying to fit the environment that they were trying to create, right? Someone that would meet that and meet that expectation. There's also something to hiring the opposite type of guy from who you just fired, and even Romeo Crennel himself, as the fill-in, as the interim last year, was the opposite type of personality of Bill O'Brien. And you kind of stayed with that, with hiring David Culley and just kind of going in a totally different direction personality wise, from the guys you had before, who was seemingly power hungry and temperamental and
crazy. I say he's crazy as hell.
Right. I mean, all of those things.
Anger issues, like for real anger issues, and also not a great coach.
Right, and you're not the only one to levy that criticism, right? And so then to go on the opposite side and say we're going to go to someone who one is not power hungry, happy to be here,
right,
fortunate to be here, and grateful to be here, and is a different personality, not a jerk as you and a lot of other people would call Bill O'Brien. A lot of people would consider him that, from their experiences. So you take all of that into account, and I think that factors into how you get a coach like this. I do think it's interesting to think about what the next coach would look like or be like, or, who that person would be, who becomes available and who are like, who are they actually interested in shepherding this rebuild coaching wise, because as involved as Nick Caserio is in coaching, we don't get the sense that like he wants to come down and like be the coach.
Right. No, I don't think he wants to. He wants to control.
Right.
He wants to keep his hand in the pot. But there's just a lot with that organization that doesn't make any sense. Then there's always the X factor that is Jack Easterby.
Right.
I don't even know really what else to say other than that.
Well, no, I think that the Jack Easterby factor matters from a number of different standpoints, like on the field and on the field product. We're at the point of now, like, we can recognize Jack Easterby for what he was and what his role was and what he did and like his part in sort of dismantling things. It's awkward that those things are true, that like that happened and that he's still here and is going to be here.
Right.
And that is difficult to reconcile and reckon with. But
because Brandon, before you go, because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make good business sense, nor does it make good football sense. But go ahead.
Well, no, so on top of that, until you produce a winning product, like until you have winning players and you start winning games, and while he's still here, like people are going to still be hung up on that. Like they're not going to be able to get over what got us here without the hope, without the thing that says we're getting out of it. Like as long as they're still losing to the Jets at home and having a debate over tanking and whether they should even be trying to win with as bad as they are, as long as you're still in that place, you got folks like screaming at Cal McNair's suite, which I think is a little bit over the top, but does does speak to a level of frustration and disappointment, with the fan base. So I do think that matters. You look around. We were there, Kim. We saw
Yeah.
it looked like a neutral site, didn't it? It looked
No,
like
it looked like a home game for Seattle. When I was coming into the parking lot to the stadium, I
yeah,
was like, there are a lot of people in the little lime green outfits, right? And then I get into the stadium, and they are loud. Like
yeah,
they were the dominant sound, the dominant fan base that you heard in the game on Sunday.
no
It
doubt.
was Seattle. They
Yeah,
call
no,
them the 12, and the
yeah,
12 was in the building.
yeah. They were louder both visually
Right.
and audibly, because they were wearing a lot of neon. So I think that was one reason why they stuck out more, is because like their colors are not subtle at all, like the
Right.
deep steel and the battle red. But so they were not subtle at all, but they were definitely, I would agree, louder and more into their team, like their team is better and was going to win the game probably always. So that probably factored into it as well. But yeah, no, I mean, so think about that environment, what like the environment that they have created, the
Yeah.
environment that they're trying to create or say that they're trying to create versus the one that they've actually created, do not coexist very well at this point.
Talking with Brandon Scott. He works with Sports Radio 610. He also has his own podcast, and he does some writing, baseball writing for Bleacher Report. So Brandon is all over the place and has a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate him joining me this morning, and it's always great when we can, you know, talk in a space like this. But when I see him in person, last thing before we jump to the Rockets, I'm going to ask you this: do you think that they bring David Culley back next year?
Yeah, I think that they do. I think that they do bring David Culley back next year, and I think that that's probably going to be it.
Yeah,
Because what next year is, next year I think is the last year where they're excused to be bad. Like they have an excuse to be bad. Like it. Because no one thinks they're going to be good next year, right? Like no one's
right. No, I
pretending.
think they're. I don't think they're going to be bad for a while. I mean, they're going to be good for a while, and I'm not. I'm not. I am not convinced that this current regime, and I'm talking Casario, Easterby, because that's where it happens. I'm not convinced that they are the ones who can create a competitive environment. I don't know if they can do it, but I
Oh
do,
no, yeah,
do
yeah, they
believe that it won't be with Cully.
Yeah, no, no one has proven themselves. Like no, like everyone is the jury is still out on. Like you're
But
not
they
going to be
seem to
able to.
give Nick a lot of rope. Like, well, we feel
Oh,
like Nick. I don't know what people have seen from Nick Casario that says, oh yeah, yeah. Once he gets these draft picks and next year and get the Deshaun Watson thing worked out, they're gonna be good. He's gonna be
Kim,
fine. I'm not. I'm not in that camp.
no, you've heard me say that the nicest thing that I've said about what he's done is the draft picks seem to be fine for the five that they had. So okay, cool. He made a couple of good signings, but there were a lot of moves that did not make any sense. You could go down a list of them, from trading a fifth round pick for Anthony Miller and cutting them 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, however long it was. You know, uh, Ryan Finley, trading a pick for him. Like there were a lot of incremental moves that didn't make sense, and he's been able to explain them away and say, hey, well, we'll use draft. We're not afraid to use draft picks to bring in a player, but they're bringing in players that either don't make sense for them, or that they give up on really, really quickly. And when you look at how this team was put together, like it's a bad roster. Like right now, the early
It's a
results,
bad roster. Yes.
the early results are not good. So like I respect my colleagues here, but I respectfully disagree that there's been anything that, like, you can't sell me any more on Nick Casario than you can on David Culley. Like it's not about just about David Culley. Like you can't sell
Right.
me on anybody in anything over there, except maybe like a handful of players. Like you can sell me on Brandon Cooks.
Right.
You can sell me on Jonathan Grenard. You know,
Yeah,
like
Kamu. Yeah.
there are individual players that you can sell me on, but as a regime, as a crew, as a label, they have not sold me on anything at all. But I do think that next year is for them the last year where they can be bad and people can excuse it. I'm not saying that they will be good the following year. I'm saying that's when heads are going to have to start to turn. Like somebody's going to have to go. And Kim, honestly, you know this. I don't think it's going to be Nick Casario or Jack Easterby. I think
It's not. It's not.
they're
I
here
think
for the
they are
long.
here. Jack has a 6-year contract. Although Cully has 5, we know he will not see that play
Yeah.
out, or 4, whatever it is he has. And people love your mic, so I'm gonna have to go back to my real microphone. You put my little mic, my
Oh,
little
that's not
AirPods to shame.
what I meant to do. That's not what
No,
I just.
no, that's it's a reminder. It sounds great. I mean, listen, we're in the business of audio and visual, so the audio is great, and so that's I like it. It's
I
like,
want
and
to come correct.
I have a Yeti mic. I just need to plug it in, right? All right. So before we, I know you've got to get ready to go over to the coaches event, to the Four Seasons event, but I want to talk briefly, real quickly, if we can, about the Houston Rockets. Of course, they started off. It was an awful start, right? And then they had a streak that was really had people trying to run Steven Silas out of town. I kept saying, it's way too soon for that. Then they turned it around. They won 7 in a row. Ran up against a Milwaukee Bucks team, the defending champion, and a Giannis who is a matchup. Is matchup hell for anybody in the league, right? Ran up against him and fought well, played hard, lost to Memphis, and came back last night in Atlanta on the road and beat an Atlanta team that's got a lot of got some weapons and can shoot it. I mean, I think Trey Young hit one of those threes from really like half court. I'm like, how do you guard that? But what do you think? What do you see from this Rockets team? I like a lot of what I'm seeing. I saw one of the things you tweeted last night about Alpi Shingun, and just the fouls, the challenges he has with that. But I think this team. I've always thought they were going to be fun to watch. I think they're getting there. It'll be interesting when the two young guys, when Scoot and Jalen get healthy and they get them back in the lineup, and if and when John Wall comes in the lineup. There's a lot of moving parts with this Rockets team, but what I see so far, I'm encouraged by.
Yeah, they're encouraging, and at the very least, they are fun and interesting to watch and
Yeah.
discuss. Like, I'll even go back to the losing streak when Steven Silas was under all of this scrutiny, and you had a segment of the fan base that wanted his head, and it was really like things looked bad. Like we can acknowledge that was probably an overreaction, and also acknowledge that the things that were going on, the things that were happening were problematic. Like everything about the
Mm-hmm.
losing streak was bad, from the rotations to how they played, the results. All of it was really bad. So like I'll go back to that and say even then I had a good time watching, and
Yeah.
like there was even some intrigue and some fun in the frustration of it all, because you saw that, hey, maybe they actually should be better than they are, and they're not maximizing their potential. Oh, and I'm getting these good looks and evaluations of the young players, but actually I'm not, because we feel like Alperen Sengun should be playing more, and we're having
Mm-hmm.
this debate about
Right.
Why is Daniel Tice on the team? What's his actual value and utility when you have an Alperen Sengun? Like, maybe you didn't know that Sengun was going to be this good when you signed Daniel Tice, but now you do. Now you know. How long is it going to take you to figure that out? We saw that it took them several games. It took them the losing streak to figure it out before they changed things up. Dissecting the Jalen Green experiment, or I shouldn't even say experiment, because that
Right.
is because I should say experience, because he is
Experience. Yeah, he's
that
here.
that's the number 2 overall pick. But like watching that play out, because both of these guys are 19 years old. One of them's been playing, and both of them have played at least a pro season, a pro like season. One of them's been doing it a little bit longer than the other. So it's been interesting watching how Şengün seems to be a little bit more NBA ready, even though he has those fouling issues, those defensive issues that I talked about in that tweet, and some athletic limitations that I think are going to keep him from being the player that Rockets Twitter has
thinks he is.
has tried to anoint him as. And I say that as somebody that really loves watching him play, and I think he's going to be a really, really good player.
But I think, Brandon, those are some of the reasons that
watching though.
It's fun to watch. I think those are also some of the reasons that Silas, in terms of how he's used, and because of those very things, right? Because of some of those limitations, and because of some of those other challenges. I tell you, a young player that I like a lot is also Josh Christopher. And I had a chance to meet his father right after the draft, and visited with his father for quite a while, and so I have a sense of who Josh Christopher is. And I think he's going to be a really solid player. I mean, he embraces even when he's in the G League, because he knows the more playing time he gets, the better it is for him. I think he understands the game better than a lot of rookies, guys his age, and I just think he's really grounded. So I like what he does and what he brings. I tell you, when I see DJ Augustine running the point for this team, because as Coach Silas always says, he calms them down, right? He's a quarterback. He really does run the point well. And so it's one thing to say, yes, you want to see these young guys. They had 4 teenagers until last week when Josh Christopher turned 20 at a birthday. And so now he's no longer a 19-year-old. They only have 3 of those, but 3 teenagers. But they're young, they're eager, and you just can't coach experience and maturity. And I'm not saying that they're immature, but they're just things that they have to learn and that they're going to learn. I was talking with Gretchen, the team president, at a dinner a while back, and we were talking about even things like a road trip, right? How to navigate a road trip, a back-to-back. That's very different, and you may have one guy on the team or, 2 that you're bringing along, but you don't usually have 4, and they're not usually the, 2 of them are your starters. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to navigate. That's coaching on the court. And like with Steven, with Coach Silas was like, getting them to understand. We played Friday night, tough game against Milwaukee. They got to take a flight out after the game, get to Memphis, get ready, take care of your body. I mean, all those things that come up with learning to be a pro, they go beyond the playbook and go beyond where you should be at any point in the offense and defense on the court. So it is interesting, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and I would specify when you mentioned the back-to-back, especially an NBA back-to-back.
Right.
With NBA travel and playing against NBA players, because basketball players are used to playing, days in a row, and like they play all the time.
Right, that's true.
But playing NBA back, like you might play in a tournament, you play them in high school and AAU and in college where you play back-to-back. But that is not the same as playing, as going from, Milwaukee to, like, who did they play the next night after that? They
played Memphis. They had to go fly to Memphis.
Yeah, right. So from playing Milwaukee to Memphis, like that is, that is not the same at all. So I think especially that, and some of the immaturities that you mentioned, I think are, like, it's not a knock to say that a 19-year-old has immaturities. They should have that, like, that's age appropriate. Yeah. So like Jalen Green is otherworldly talented, super athletic, can get buckets, can score, crafty with the basketball. Like, he's going to be a really, really good player, but he's physically immature. He's skinny right now, and his body's going to have to develop. He looks 19 years old physically. He's like a tall 19-year-old. And then, at the same time, like he's, in some ways emotionally, like he looks, sounds, everything about him is 19 years old.
Right. Like, here's the thing. You say to him, hey, so Jalen, you ask a question about, so-and-so said this about your game, or this happened. Really? Oh, man, yeah, that's lit.
It's lit. Everything's lit to him right now.
Everything is lit, or dope. right? And I'm like,
And,
oh, I just want to pull him in the corner and let me give him some training because he doesn't know yet.
right. But to your point that I think is a good one about Josh Christopher is that he is developmentally different
Right.
because of some of the things that I think that you mentioned, maybe some of the things that you learned from talking to his dad, and like it's just different there. But he's not necessarily the talent that Jalen Green is, right? And
Right.
so I thought it was very important throughout the season, earlier in the season when when we first started getting to look at these guys, and Christopher was kind of on the bench. After playing a little bit in the preseason, he was on the bench in the regular. I said, wherever he's at, he needs to be playing. Like
Right.
that guy needs to be playing, whether it's in the G League, whether he's getting some minutes here, like whatever the plan is, it needs to be for him to play, not for him to just sit. I think that that's valuable experience for him. So like even for him developmentally, it's just about playing.
Yeah.
And then with Şengün, I mentioned earlier, in the tweet last night, and I'll mention again, this guy is out here swatting, reaching, and like just flailing out there on the defensive end. And it's like, hey man, you got to just put your hands up and like know your value as a player. Like not only is that not a smart foul, but like you're actually too valuable of a player to get in foul trouble now. Like you matter that much, or at least you're going to pretty soon. Like you're going to be an important enough player to this team to where you can't be getting tic-tac fouls. Like
Yeah.
leave the tic-tac fouls to Daniel Tice. Like let him come in there and rack up fouls, not you. So all these guys got something to learn and develop on.
What do you think about how you feel about Christian Wood? I feel like Christian Wood we're seeing him at a place that he was before he got hurt, and maybe it's when he was still playing with James before James took his wares to Brooklyn. But I like what I see from Christian Wood, and sometimes I'm not one of those people that likes the big guy to always be on the perimeter. I want you to be able to play under the basket. I think they need that a little bit, but what he's been able to do and how he's kind of finding his space, I've been okay with that too.
Yeah, I think that Christian Wood is like he would be valuable on any team. And my question has always been about like what his interests are and what like his commitment is. And I don't mean that in sort of a character way, just like what his value is. He's at a point in his career, where he's kind of in a breakout situation, right? He got this contract and it's worked out for him in that first year as far as like kind of showing and validating and proving his worth, maybe even being a little bit beyond what he's been paid. So like I like Christian Wood, and again, my only question was like, how much does he want to be a part of something like this? I really think that he has a chance, and the debate on Christian Wood is really interesting to me because there is an argument for trading him and selling high early and getting some value for him before he goes off and signs somewhere for more money. Like I totally get that. I also though think that like he is at least young enough and has enough basketball left in him that when things do turn, when this team does figure it out, that he can be sort of that piece, that veteran piece, that guy who like Eric Gordon's not going to be around for that stay, right? But Christian Wood
Right.
could be. I just don't know what
Right.
that's going to cost, what his mark is going to look like, what his vision for himself is, how he views himself in the league. Like these guys gotta usually have an inflated view for what they are, and that's not a knock on Christian Wood. Very good player, no weaknesses offensively, somewhat underrated defensively, I think, but also limited in some ways. But just a very good player. And I would love to see him still be around when those guys do mature and when they do figure it out. Because I think he could be a solid piece to a winning team. That's granted if, Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün are the foundational pieces that we think they are, or
and Kevin Porter Jr. If he,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave him out. Kevin Porter
yeah,
Jr. All of those guys, like if they are the foundational pieces that we project them to be and want them to be, like us, because Christian Wood can't be I don't think can be your best player on a championship team. I'm not breaking any news there. I don't even think he can be your second best player on a championship team. But like if some combination of KPJ, Jalen Green, and Alperen Şengün are somewhere from star to superstar, like at least one superstar between the three of them, and
Right.
at least one star between what's left over, and God forbid all three of them are star to superstar, and you keep Christian Wood, like that's a solid young nucleus, and we haven't even mentioned the value of a Jay Sean Tate, somebody like that,
Right.
Swiss Army knife who you can put anywhere on the floor, can play in any lineup. Again, Josh Christopher, who you mentioned earlier, some value signings and guys like Garrison Matthews and Armani Brooks who can provide you depth. Those guys probably shouldn't play as much as they've been playing. Like quite honestly,
Right.
but they've been injured.
They've
And
been injured. They've had
they
some
got
bang.
young
Yeah.
guys. But DJ Augustine as a backup point guard, somebody to come and give you minutes like he did last night. I
Right.
forgot David Nwaba was on the team.
Until it gets like the
Yeah.
Bucks, I'm like, oh, that's right. You see what he gives you, and I a lot of us, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh my God, Eric Gordon. But Eric Gordon has shown up in some games and has been a difference maker at some times when they've needed it. And I think you're right. In the future, he's probably not going to be that. But right now, they need what they're getting from EG
Yeah, no, best player on the team right now at the moment. I
at the
think
moment.
some combination of EG and Christian Wood at the moment on any given night, one of those guys is your best player on the team. And I'm okay with that. I know that Eric Gordon is going to more than likely be traded eventually, but I like the fact that like I know this is hard for being at this stage. I'm the exact same age as Eric Gordon. Being at this stage in his career and feeling like, hey, I've seen how close you can get. I've been close,
Right.
and
Right.
want to get close again. Like I know this has got to be frustrating, but he's handled this like a champion, and he's playing extremely well. Like,
Yeah. If he stays healthy, you get good stuff, and that's been the big thing with him. I think throughout his career is whether or not he stays healthy. Brandon, I told you 20 minutes. I've kept you almost the entire time. I appreciate it. I could talk to you. I know I will see you. I'm guessing tomorrow back over at the Texans, but I'll be following you on Twitter. I have your Twitter handle on the page so we can see what's happening at that the Bear Bryant event. So thank you. And um, what thing are you looking forward to in sports the rest of this week? What is it? What's the thing that you want to see with either the Rockets or I don't know, maybe it's the Texans on Sunday? What's on your mind for this week that you want to see how it plays out?
yeah, so Kim, how my world works, and we don't have to get too deep into it, but the world that I live in and that I traffic in is fixated on this thing that's going on with the Texans and how bad it is. And I do think that this is an opportunity this week for them to win a game. It goes back to that interesting discussion earlier of whether they should even be trying to win a game. I was listening to our morning show earlier, and they read a text from either overnight or when we had state radio on, Texans radio on yesterday, and someone said that Mark Vandermeer should be fired because he wants the Texans to win on Sunday. But like, what is Mark supposed to do? Like what?
Right.
Like how can Mark Vandermeer, the voice of the Texans, be out here wanting them to tank and rooting for the number 1 or number 2 overall pick? Like he can't be out here doing that. He has to want them to win. So I'm actually looking forward to the foolish and ridiculous debate over whether they should even be trying to win, and the opportunity, the fact that they could win this game. Urban Meyer and all of the mess around Urban Meyer. And I know they already came here. Texans are going there, so that's not going to be here in the building. But the fact that is, still a storyline and will collide with the Texans, I think is
Talk about a dumpster fire. The Urban Meyer experiment at the NFL level. There's no doubt he's a great coach at the collegiate level. It has not been borne out to be productive on the professional level. And it's always, I mean, if it's not him not flying back with the team and being caught on tape with some young woman co-ed that's not his wife, or
right,
or telling the assistant coaches they ain't nothing, and I mean, or it's just always some drama with this dude and with that team that's also, by the way, not very good.
Yeah, I had my doubts. I thought that I thought it was interesting because Urban Meyer is a good and accomplished football coach. So I thought there were obvious reasons to be interested in Urban Meyer, but the actual pairing itself, I had questions about because I just did not know how his personality would fit and his understanding of the world and the way he's been able to do go about his business. I did not know how that would play in the NFL. I had some skepticism about it, even though, again, I thought that coaching wise and as a football coach, there was an obvious reason to be interested in it. But yeah, no, it just that has not played out well at all. And I thought that the co-ed that to me that's been one of the funniest between that one and Aaron Rodgers lying about getting vaccinated to the public. Those have been and Antonio Brown turning in a fake vaccine card, him and a couple others. Those have been some of the more fascinating storylines outside of like between the lines that I can remember, and that the things have continued with Urban Meyer, like from day one, from hiring the strength coach who had the racist background, all the way to now to like challenging the coaches that are still left to validate themselves and their resume after he's the one that hired them. Like, you validate. You the one that hired.
You brought me here, right? Yeah.
You defend it, because you're the reason why they're here. So, yeah, no, I'm really, really fascinated with that. And then I'll say this too, Kim, before I go. I think that locally in Houston, the number one sports storyline is the one that dropped yesterday, and that's Justin Verlander still being able to get that deal through despite the whole lockout situation.
Right, that's true.
Like that was a big question mark. And however you feel about the Verlander sign, and I know that there are mixed feelings on whether they should have spent the money elsewhere and whether they should have invested in Verlander. Like, you can have that debate amongst yourselves. I'm personally cool with it, but I get that side of the debate. But as far as it's concerned, the fact that they brought him, that they were able to get that deal done at the last second, the same way
before they shut everything down.
Right before they shut everything down, and that there were questions about whether, like, why didn't they announce that, and why wasn't that official, and like we had questions, unanswered questions about it, and here we are pretty early on in the lockout, got that question answered. I think that is a very significant and probably underrated storyline, considering everything else that's going on, with the Texans still playing in the Rockets, being early in the season.
So as you leave, I just want to give you two comments from first of all, you're a fan favorite. They said bring him back, so you got to come back. And join us on Chalk Talk. And also, Jolando Johnson and I probably feel the same way. He says tanking is idiotic sports talk. No athlete plays a game to lose. It is sports talk. And I have people that I respect that go back and forth about it. Players don't tank. Coaches don't tank. Front offices do.
Yeah. No, I mean, tanking is for nerds. Let's just put it out. Tanking, and I say that as someone who is admittedly has nerdy aspects to his own personality. I'm a nerd to certain levels, but that's not part of it. And again, I get the logic behind it, but the spirit behind it, I think, is wrong and dishonest to the point that you make about players not tanking. And especially in football. Like, it's to me, it's hard. Like that is in and of itself inherently a game that you have to try hard to both be successful in and to simply protect yourself, to not
get injured.
To not get your head knocked off. Talk to any of these football players. Like, it takes to me, honestly, a different type of personality to even play football to begin with. I can't imagine that same person therefore going out there and dogging it. It just doesn't sit right. And
they're playing for their future, right? Because think about these Texans players. Most of them are on 1 year. Some have 2-year contracts. Nick will probably turn the roster over again. Who knows how many people from this roster? Maybe there's maybe there's 30 new people again next year, right? So these guys are playing for their next job too.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, let me promote this since we said that, because I'm going to talk about this on the B Block on my next episode of the B Block podcast. Y'all make sure y'all check it out. You can get it on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your pod, Google, wherever. And of course, follow me on the Twitter scroll down there where you see it at Brandon K. Scott. But I'm actually going to discuss the answer that Chris Conley gave me at the end of that press conference on Monday about because I asked him, I said, what do you want to see? How do you want to see this season end or unfold? What are you looking for? What are you looking forward to for the end of the season when there isn't, and my exact wording was when there isn't as much to play for? I tried to be careful to not say that there's nothing to play for, but it is true that you're not playing for as much because you're not a contender. And he said, there's always something to play for, and went kind of on a little bit of a rant has a bad association, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Right.
He gave a response of, forget that talk about not having as much to play for. You are showing, you are showing your tape, your resume, your character, like who are you, no matter who's looking, even when it's quote unquote not. When people like myself and nerds or whatever else want to say that you don't have anything to play for, how do you play? How do you show yourself? What kind of work ethic do you have? That is a big part of like your pride. And they want to talk about culture over there in that building off of Kirby and say that they're trying to establish culture. Well, tanking would not be establishing any sort of culture. Not trying.
That's not a culture you want to build on.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Not having any pride in losing to the Jets at home or getting shut out by the Colts at home. That is not culture building. That is not the type of the stench that you want on this team through a rebuild or anything like it. So I think that's an important thing to consider when you talk about tanking and like what's in the best interest of the team and some of those cliches, like what really matters, like going out there and actually trying to win the game, I think has some value in culture setting and like what you're ultimately going to be about, what your DNA is as a franchise.
And with that is Brandon K. Scott. You can follow him on Twitter. His handle's on the screen, Brandon K. Scott. You can also get a link you can follow his podcast from there. Brandon, I appreciate you. I know you got to run. Enjoy the luncheon. I'll be following you on Twitter to see what they're talking about. And I will see you tomorrow at the Houston Texans.
All right. Sounds good, Kim. Thanks for having me. And I'll be back. Y'all. I'll see y'all
soon.
They
said, all right, that he's coming back.
Yeah, careful what you ask for because I'm coming back. All right,
all right. Thanks, Brandon.
All right,
that's Brandon Scott. If you can imagine, I enjoy having someone like Brandon to talk to at some of the games and to be able to really kind of chop it up with. And so he actually gave a whole lot more time than he originally that I asked for. So I appreciate him for that, and I appreciate you guys for engaging and being a part of the conversation. Remember, it's the holiday season, and what I say about that is just be careful. It's a lot of people that are out craziness and acting out. So I just want you to be safe so that we can show up back here again and that you can show up for your family. If you've not been vaccinated, do that. Make sure that you get vaccinated. If you're already vaccinated, get the booster. We are not out of this pandemic yet. I'm going to always encourage you to do that. And I'm going to encourage you to do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. And that includes not making yourself crazy this holiday season, running around like it's a rat race and spending a bunch of money that you don't have for people who, you don't really need to be spending money on. I'm just saying. It's a season. I love the holidays. If you know me, Christmas was my mom's probably favorite holiday. So it hits in a special place. But I love it because it's about spending time with friends and family and making some good food and sharing that. It's about those kind of things and about, for me, the reason, of what the season's really about. So I'm just encouraging you to find your place of peace during this holiday season and don't let it make you crazy and don't let it stress out and be safe out there in those holiday streets. All right. Remember, I'll be here next Tuesday at 10 a.m. But in between, you can follow me here on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you follow me, even on LinkedIn. I post a lot of interviews and videos on IG, so I hope to see you all then. And as always, I appreciate you being a part of the tribe. Make it a great week, and I will see you next Tuesday on Chalk Talk. See you guys.